So this time around, well, firstly, welcome. Thanks for coming. This time around, we are building a LinkedIn ideas agent. I think it'll be a popular one. I'm hoping it's going to be a popular video as well once the video is created. I'm sticking my neck out a little bit with this one, so we'll see how it goes. Live builds by their nature don't always go to plan, but we're going to use a slightly different method of using LinkedIn content. So there's a LinkedIn tool in the platform. I'll just share my screen actually and show this quickly, and then I'll get stuck in. Cool. So if I was going to, I'll create a workspace quickly, and we'll just go LinkedIn ideas. A quick note: if you're less familiar with Autohive, is to think about workspaces as spaces to divide projects or teams, maybe. I've got loads of workspaces in my own plan, and I'll create one when I'm going to work on something new, and all the agents in there are specific to that that task or project. And when I'm finished with it, I can delete it. If it's something that lives forever, then I've got a specific space that I can go to in order to kick that work off. So to create a workspace, you just click on workspaces, which is above the list of workspace names, and go create workspace. So I was going to show the LinkedIn tool briefly. So when I'm creating a new agent, to give it the LinkedIn tool, you go add integrations and agents, and then find LinkedIn down here. And this is what I was going to show you, right? So this is pretty limited. All it can do is get your own profile information based on how you authorize or authenticate the tool. And if I press add LinkedIn now, it's going to ask me to authenticate. And in order to do that, I have to log into my own LinkedIn. So that means that it can only then, oh, interesting. This is a new scope. I didn't know that was there. It could only retrieve my own profile information or post as me, right? Which is not that helpful if what you want to do is look through LinkedIn for content ideas from your favorite influencers, for example. So in order to do that, and the reason that those scopes don't exist on the LinkedIn tool is that the LinkedIn API makes that impossible, as far as I'm aware. But there is another way, and the way to do it is using Google X-ray search. So we're going to have a go at this. We're going to build this agent so that it can use Google X-ray search. I'll put a link in the chat now for you guys to grab and open in a new tab if you want, so you can look at this later. This is a link that I'm going to give our prompt writing agent to go and review before it writes our instructions, so that the agent that it creates can hopefully use Google X-ray search to help us out. So the agent that we're building uses X-ray search to look for new posts from influencers that I will provide it. So I've just picked 3 influencers that I like to follow in the AI space, and I'm going to ask it to go and look for new posts from those influencers, then generate drafts of posts that I could post based on that content, because it typically is performing well, right? And then it can send those draft ideas to Slack, and I can come back to the platform and work with the agent in the chat thread and say, okay, I like idea number 3. Let's flesh it out a bit more. Here's how to rewrite it. And at the point where I'm happy, the agent would then be able to use that LinkedIn tool to post directly to LinkedIn as me if I wanted it to. In my experience, I don't actually let agents post as me directly to LinkedIn. And often these tools are really useful for just getting a thought started. And then I'll often just completely rewrite it, add my own thoughts and feelings, and then post it myself. I've spoken about this a couple of times recently, but I feel like LinkedIn is one of the last safe havens or vestiges of authentic communication online, right? And if we start to flood that with nonsense, then we lose that last one. So I guess just proceed with caution. It's possible. We're going to show you that it's possible, we hope. And then, yeah, I guess make your own decisions about how you use it. So to get started, I'm going to go to Browse Agents. So I clicked on the workspace name that I want to work in and go Browse Agents. We're going to get Prompt Writer for this. So I'll just hit Get Agent. now I've got prompt writer inside my workspace. And as I mentioned, I'm going to ask it to go and review the URL that I shared in the chat first. So I've just said, please go read this URL about X-ray search, and we'll use the information to write the system instructions for a new agent. So it should hopefully do that. And then I've got a follow-up prompt ready, which is quite detailed, just in the interest of trying to take some tweaks and evaluation steps out of the process. So I'll just let this retrieve that information and have a read for a second, and then I'll send a follow-up. Oh, that's frustrating. So it's taking a go straight away at guessing what I wanted. So I'll correct it in a second. So this is an example of a massive set of system instructions, right? And sometimes it's required, sometimes it's not. There is definitely sort of diminishing returns in some cases. It depends on the complexity of the agent that you're building and the constraints you want it to have, the guardrails you want it to have, etc. But prompt writer here has made some pretty significant assumptions and started writing some instructions. So once it finally finishes, I'll tell it to scrap all of that, and we'll try again with the detailed prompt that I've got. At the moment, prompt writer's on Gemini 2.5 Pro, I think. It's due for a round of evaluations and improvements, as you can tell. So when Gemini 3 comes out, I'll prioritize that, and then we'll get a new version of prompt writer out. This is massive. This might be the longest set I've ever seen it write. Anyway, maybe I'll just stop it.
Mine didn't do that when I put in the same thing.
Interesting, yeah, and you'll never get the same answer twice, right? It is running. I'm pretty sure prompt writer is at a below 0.7 temperature. So when you talk to ChatGPT or Claude, you get about 0.7 as the temperature. But prompt writer will be set up to be slightly below that, which typically means that it adheres to its instructions quite carefully, doesn't take too much creative freedom, which makes me worry about the size of that set of instructions that it's written. So it's definitely due for a round of evals. But the prompt that I've written now, I've thought about quite carefully to take some tweaks and steps out of this process, because we've only got 6 more minutes to try and build this agent. So I'm stepping it through the process. It should look back no more than 14 days for new posts. Even now, maybe I should say, using the X-ray search functionality, it will use the clock tool to check today's date and time each time it runs. So there's an inbuilt clock tool in Autohive, which is actually really handy for stuff like this. There's an area, I'll show you in a second, but there's an area where you can select a by Autohive set of tools, and one of those is a clock. So you can instruct an agent to get time and date now before it starts any process, and then it tends to do a better job of looking back with a limit. So you don't say, ask it to get all my calendar events, and it gets every single one for the last 18 years since Outlook appeared or whatever. You can say, get the date now, and look at only calendar events in the future for the next 7 days or something, and see if it works better when you give it that clock tool. So I've said the agent will check the following 3 accounts. These are just 3 AI posters that I like to follow. Should read the content and use those as inspiration to provide me 5 ideas for new posts. Send these through to a Slack channel. I've put the Slack channel ID in here. That's just a good practice that I've got into, because typically without that, the agent might say, oh, I need the ID, or which channel would you like me to put it in? And the idea of this agent is, we would schedule it. Therefore, we don't want too much back and forth. We don't want it to stop and ask a question in this process. We would just want to get a message in Slack that says, here's your 5 ideas. So I'm coaching it towards giving us some instructions that will give us that output, hopefully. The user will come to the conversation thread, approve one idea to be posted. The agent will have a LinkedIn tool to allow it to do so. So the agent will need the following tools: correct use of X-ray search, the Slack tool with the Slack ID, and the LinkedIn tool. So hopefully it's gonna have another go at writing instructions. Let's hope we don't get the same verbosity as the first one. It's starting out quite long, considering that's only the core identity section. Yes, Sarah, I can. I'll do that. You'll obviously want to change that Slack channel ID. You probably won't have a Slack channel ID with that ID. It won't be able to post into mine, so don't worry about that. If you forget to change it, it still has to be authenticated in order to work. Right, we're going to run with these instructions when it's finished, but these are massive. I could definitely say to it, that's way too verbose. This is not all that complex. Let's trim some fat out of this, please. We'll run with it and see. I'm going to run this agent on a Gemini 2.5 Pro anyway, so it's got loads of context window. Should be capable of handling it okay. I almost feel like something has changed recently here that makes this perform differently and write this amount. So once it's finished, we're just going to create this new agent and we'll take it for a test drive. When you're using an agent like this to create system instructions, the examples section, which prompt writer should always include references and examples as its final section. That section often has the biggest impact on how the agent performs, in my experience. That's kind of anecdotal, but it's often one of the places I come back to tweak or add more examples or remove examples that aren't quite accurate. So keep that in mind. If you've got a really important agent that's going a little bit off script, you could start by just grabbing the references and examples section only and going to prompt writer and saying, I don't think these examples are quite right. The agent's doing something strange. And have that section rewritten first and see whether things improve. These are a huge set of system instructions for this task. This agent is overdue for a bit of a cleanup, I think. Anyway, all I did there was click on the plus and go create agent, and I've copied the instructions that it wrote for me, and I'm pasting them into the system prompt box. There is agent creator on the right-hand side here, which you're welcome to mess about with if you haven't already. This is a place to have a natural language conversation with an agent, and it will fill out this form for you, including writing the system instructions. If you use that, think about the complexity and the stakes of the agent that you're creating, because agent creator is very good at getting you started, but it writes a far more pared back instructions than prompt writer does. So you might not get the same guardrails and constraints if you use agent creator, but it's a really good way to get started. And if the agent isn't public facing, it's just something to bounce ideas around with, then it's a really good place to start. Let's go LinkedIn. And I said I was going to use Gemini 2.5 Pro 0.4. I'm turning the temperature down a bit because I want it to stick to its process and still have a little bit of creativity in there. If I turn it down to 0, what it comes up with might be pretty rubbish or pretty boring. So now we'll add the tools that it needs, and it needs a Slack tool. It needs a LinkedIn tool for the end of the process. And actually, I guess that's it, because it's got the web search tool is built in. Oh no, it needs the clock, doesn't it? So this is where the clock lives, in the by Autohive area, and I'll turn off member search and image generator. You should just see clock there. That's an important point as well, actually, about scopes on tools. So sometimes people are hesitant to give access to their calendar or their email, for example. From a security perspective, the data is safe. We're hitting these models via API. The data goes in and comes back out. We can't see it, nor can the model company. But what scares people, and it scares me as well, is if I give it my Gmail account and leave all of the scopes turned on, it could send emails, and it's actually done this to me. I've asked it to create a draft, and it's assured me that it's created the draft and it's in my drafts waiting to be sent. But then I went to my sent items and saw that it had sent it. So just a word of caution and a tip is you can turn off individual scopes here. So these are all of the things that an agent can do with the Gmail tool. And by default, they're all on. But what you could do if you wanted, if you only ever wanted to create drafts, is turn them all off and just give it the create draft scope. Then it's impossible for it to send an email. And you can do that with any tool. So same with Slack, you might want it to never tag a Slack user, for example, because it might accidentally tag @everyone or something like that. So have a look at what scopes are available and turn them on and off as you need, rather than always allowing it to default to all on. So I'll authenticate LinkedIn. I don't think I'll. Yeah, I can do. I don't have a demo LinkedIn account, so if we get this agent as far as posting, it's going to post into my account. I'll jump in and remove it afterwards. And I'll authenticate Slack. Going to use my sandbox Slack for this. Cool. Right, I think we're ready. Oh, you have to give it a description as well. Helps me with LinkedIn videos. I'm already a bit behind on time, so let's hope that it works. It might take a long time to get through its process as well. Please check for recent posts. Send your IDs to Slack. So if my prompt was correct, it has the Slack ID or the channel ID for this channel, which is LinkedIn ideas, and a message should arrive in here. This was a test one from earlier today. But let's go back and see if we can see its process. So it started by using the clock, which is good. Check today. It might take a few attempts to get these tool calls right, which I'm not surprised about. It says, okay, I couldn't find any recent posts from the specific LinkedIn accounts. I will generate some content ideas based on their areas of expertise. Interesting. So it's gone off script a bit there, right? Potentially the prompt could be tweaked so that I could say, never generate your own ideas. If you don't find any, just tell me you didn't find any. You're not a creative genius, so don't bother trying to come up with your own ideas. It did send through, yeah, here we go, 12:19. So it sent this through. It's completely made it up because it didn't get anything from the X-ray search. And this happened to me earlier as well. So I'm going to say, please check your use of X-ray search. Make sure to look for posts content, not profile content. Because I looked at some tool calls that it was trying to make earlier, and it was returning profile information for Dharmesh Shah instead of what Dharmesh has been talking about on LinkedIn. So we'll see if we get anywhere next time around. And what I would do with enough time is take the system prompt for this agent to prompt writer and say, we need to reevaluate how it's using X-ray search because it's not executing the searches correctly. I'm also just going to check whether it has got web search access. So that's not the problem. I've got a backup one here, so I'll see whether I can make this one do it. When I was testing this earlier on, it was getting some from some of these sources. So potentially the size of that system prompt is also tripping it up, right? There's too much information in there. The workflow or the process is not clear. And I'm not going to keep digging this hole and trying to fix this. I've built one that works. So in your own time, you can get with your prompt writer and talk about X-ray search and use that link that I've shared in the chat to try to train an agent to use X-ray search reliably, because it works. And if you go to browse agents, there's another agent in here which uses X-ray search. It's Candidate Finder, I think. Yeah, or LinkedIn Recruit is what it's called. So remember the scopes I showed you on the LinkedIn tool were only based around my own profile or your own profile. You can post as yourself, or you can get your own profile information. LinkedIn Recruit does way more than that, and it's doing it using X-ray search. So take that one for a test drive, if you like, and then have a go at building your own. Let me just jump to the chat. I think there's a question coming in. Oh, thanks, Nicole. Cool. Yeah, that's what happens on a live demo, right? Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But I promise it's possible. I showed you the proof. So yeah, have a mess about with prompt writer. If you get the same verbosity and the same wordy instructions, feel free to flick me a message or an email with any feedback, because I am gathering feedback to do my own evaluations on that one and on use case brainstormer. So the more of that I've got, the more useful the next version will be. The last thing that I wanted to speak to, and then we can do some Q&A, is the process that we've asked of this agent is a lot of steps, right? It's use the clock first, then it's remind yourself how to use X-ray search, then use it 3 times to go and get 3 different profiles, recent posts, then synthesize them into content ideas. No worries, Sarah. See ya. Then synthesize into content ideas and send those through to Slack. And at that stage, the user comes back to the conversation, you hash out the idea that you like, and it posts it. That's a lot of work for one agent to do. And in order to make this a really accurate, tight, repeatable process, schedulable process, where you don't have to correct it when it stops to ask a question or something, I would split this out into 2 or even 3 agents. And I would have one agent with the Slack tool, perhaps, and then it has 2 sub-agents that it can use. And the first one is the Google X-ray search specialist. It knows exactly how to use X-ray search. It's got 3 URLs for LinkedIn profiles. And all it has to do when it's instructed by the orchestrator is use X-ray search and get the recent posts. That's it. And then the orchestrator, when it gets that response, passes that to the ideas synthesizer or something. The ideas synthesizer turns those into new ideas. Maybe the ideas synthesizer also has a transcript of an interview that I did with ChatGPT. Maybe I said, interview me about my opinions on AI. And I can answer those questions and then give that transcript to that agent. Now it's got some of my opinions. So the color of what it drafts is closer to how I would write. So that takes a little bit of work out for me. Then when those ideas come back, the orchestrator just pings them through to Slack, and I come back to the orchestrator and say, okay, this one's approved, or let's work on this one. So that's now 3 agents doing what we've just tried to get one agent to do. And that's a mindset to try and get into, is like, where are the edges of each of these responsibilities? And can I build separate agents to do it? Because it's so easy in Autohive to give one agent a tool of another, and then just use prompt writer to tell it that it's got that agent. So you just go add integrations and agents, and there's integrations here, obviously, but there's also agents. So if I had a load of other agents in here, I could give any of them as a tool to this first agent. And then it can call on that tool whenever it needs it. So that's the process of building an orchestrator and providing it agent tools. And this is a perfect example, because this is a complex use case. It didn't even work correctly the first time. And in this scenario, with more time, I would have split it into probably 3, maybe even a 4th agent. And in terms of delivering the ideas, you could use Slack, or you could make it drop a calendar event in every Friday morning when the calendar event's got the Slack ideas in it, got the LinkedIn ideas in it. Lots of different ways to deliver it to yourself. It depends on your own tech stack. I often lean on Slack because it's what I use, but yeah, loads of different ways.